I think we can move on to the NBA awards. And we can start off with MVP, the most talked about controversial award. I'm not sure what way you guys are leaning, but I'm going to go with Joel Embiid for this award. 33 a game, leading the NBA in scoring, and he anchors a top five defense. Maybe part of this is just me being a bit biased towards Embiid. I think these, like, all candidates are deserving in Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. I think the argument against Giannis is that his team wins without him, and he's missed more games than all these guys, although it's not been that much. I think Jokic has had the most efficient season. And let me be clear when I say that I think that if there wasn't so much talk around him being a three-time MVP with no playoff success, he possibly wins the award. I think Joel Embiid is deserving of it, though. I think that this is one of the better 3 year stretches we've seen from a player. And if we come away from this time and say he didn't win MVP, I think it'd be a disservice to a player of his caliber because he's definitely been an MVP type player, and I'm gonna go with the Joel Embiid for my MVP.
For me personally, I just think the whole discourse around this MVP has been really odd. I think like in terms of Giannis fans, Embiid fans, Joker fans, they have come instead of trying to uplift their players, they have bashed one another's players to try to tear them down for the MVP. When in reality, you get three guys that finished, as a finalist, and all three of them are up deserving. I think Embiid and Joker deserve it a little bit more than Giannis, but I think Giannis still you can make a case. But Embiid and Joker, I think, have been the best players in the regular season this year. Embiid been a dominant two-way player. Offensively, he's been the leading scorer. But what the Joker does is just he elevates his players so much to the level of where he makes everybody better. He initiates the offense. Defensively, I know he's not Joel Embiid or he's not Giannis, but what he does on offense, you can offset that on defense because he does so much on the offensive end. For me, though, my pick is the Joker. I think, you look at team construction, he doesn't have another all-star player. The other two does. He kind of does everything for them offensively. When he's not playing, they look like a lottery team, and I think that's something that's very important because if a team looks like a lottery team without you, and then with you, they look like the number one team in the West, that is extremely, extremely
Tell
important
him,
to
Rich.
me. Huh?
Tell him.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So yeah, for me, I got the Joker, but I think all three guys, I think not three, like I think Embiid and the Joker are the two-headed race. They've been like that. Giannis is the third guy, but I think either Joel or the Joker deserve it. But I'll go the Joker.
This is far and away one of the closest MVP races we've seen. And the reality is, all three of these guys are having MVP caliber seasons. But I have two thoughts. One, how can a guy be MVP when his team's above 500 without him? Yet another guy could have a team that's 4-8 without him. Giannis this year has missed over a dozen games, and in those matchups, the Bucks are 11-6. The 76ers without Embiid are 8-5. The Nuggets without Jokic look like a G League team. And then my other thought is, why is Embiid MVP over Jokic? Is it because the stakes raised for a guy to win it 3 straight years? And if that's the case, is Nikola Jokic deserving enough to enter the company of Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and Larry Bird as the only players ever to win 3 straight? So let's look at it. Jokic is having the most efficient volume season we've ever seen. 70% true shooting, spectacular. And his playmaking is so great that while a lot of people point out to his defensive issues, because of how much he opens up the game as a passer, it allows the Nuggets to play their best defenders, right? So let's take Christian Brown. You put him on the 76ers, and his offensive limitations would almost make him unplayable. But in Denver, when he's been on the floor with Jokic, he's playable offensively. And the same goes for an Aaron Gordon, who Magic fans 2.5, 3 years ago, they want his ass out of Orlando. And now we're putting him in all-star game conversations. Contavious Caldwell-Pope played for years with LeBron. Right now is one of, if not his most efficient season. Bruce Brown's another case in point. We talk about the Nuggets as contenders, not because of the supporting cast, because their bench is shit. We talk about them as contenders because of Nikola Jokic. You give Jokic the Bucks bench, and I guarantee you the Nuggets this year winning 60 games. There's also one last thought I have. I've seen multiple 76ers fans point out, this one gets me, that Embiid locked it up, kind of just, we got to balance it out, right? Jokic has 2, let's give Embiid his 1. It does not sit right with me that the one game Embiid set out was going to be the one game Mile High. And if you think the award is locked up after that, that to me just rubs me the wrong way. As someone that loves basketball, seeing the top 2 candidates for MVP, the 2 best players in the regular season, not going head to head because the guy that's supposed to win MVP ducked the other one.
I like all the points you made, John. I'll only push back on the Christian Brown point because he's a good shooter. I think him in Philadelphia would still thrive. Probably not to the level of what him with Jokic, but I think that Philadelphia would love Christian Brown right now on their team.
I think he's made like 12 threes this year.
He doesn't play a lot.
Yeah,
He
34
doesn't play a
threes.
lot
Yeah,
early in the
he
year.
doesn't get a lot of burn.
And he takes 2 threes per 36.
He's a good basketball player. I think he'd be able to play anywhere.
I told you about him, Pee Wee. Don't forget.
He knows how to play basketball. Did you? Or
Yeah.
did you vouch extra hard from him? But I don't think you told me about
No,
it.
no, I
He-
meant to
he
say
vouched-
I
he
meant to
vouched
say
extra hard
extra
for
hard.
him.
Vouch extra hard. Yeah.
Okay.
Told you about that, man.
You made some very good points, John. Some very, very good points. I'm gonna go with Embiid. I got Embiid as my MVP. I just think that for me, I'm gonna just be real. It feels like Embiid's year to win it, and I'm just going off the field. I can't argue against anything Nikola Jokic related. I wouldn't even put myself in a position to do something so stupid. The thing about this conversation for me is the lack thereof with Giannis. Teams winning games without their best player, with the best player, that shit is all good and whatever. But the Bucks are not the Bucks without Giannis, and that's all that matters. None of these teams are their teams without them. The fact that they haven't had Chris Middleton is also something that stands out for me, considering how much that was a factor for me last year with Jokic, and he didn't have Michael Porter Jr. or Jamal Murray. So for Giannis and the Bucks to not have Chris Middleton and not really skip a beat, that stood out to me. And I know Brook Lopez had a resurgence or whatnot, but Brook Lopez in past years has not ever meant as much as Chris Middleton. Now that might change in this year specifically, but to lose Chris Middleton should have been a very big blow to the Bucks, and we didn't get that. Now as far as Embiid, like I said, I just felt like he had some dominant performances and some performances that made me say, "Oh shit," you know what I mean? Like he's without a doubt the MVP. I like it though, and here's why. Joel Embiid is a guy, in my opinion, that's on that top upper echelon that hasn't really faced any criticism. So after Joel Embiid wins this MVP, I have to see something. Give him the MVP, clap for him because he deserves it. Then we're gonna shut up. Him and Jokic now have to do some shit in the playoffs. If that's the narrative people want to run with, because the whole shit is, we give it to Jokic and they don't really. So cool, we're gonna give it to Embiid. For most of Embiid's career in Philadelphia, any shortcomings that they've had, you've been able to thrust them upon Ben Simmons. He is long gone. He's gone. Brett Brown is gone. Ben Simmons is gone. The Jimmy Butler shit is old. You got Harden. You the MVP. Y'all got Doc Rivers, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris is playing great. Y'all got everything y'all need. So now we have to see something, because I think Joel Embiid has not gotten the criticism that a lot of other players would have if they were in his position and have had played with the teams that he's been a part since he's been on the Philadelphia 76ers. I love Embiid. I love the process. I'm a big Joel Embiid guy. But it's time for Joel Embiid to do something in the postseason, because any other player, y'all put that on them. Like even players that's not there. I'm a big Paul George fan. He's never been at the tier that Embiid is. They can't shut up about Paul George shortcomings. They won't let you talk about James Harden and not mention what he hasn't done in the playoffs. Jason Tatum and them boys this version of them just got to the finals, and we talking about Jason Tatum might not be a number one. We don't hear shit about that with Joel Embiid. We never hear not an inch of it unless it's like a super 76er hater. But if we just having conversations, nobody really got anything to say about Embiid. So I'm happy to give him the MVP. He's earned it. And then, the conversation of Jokic winning it 3 times is definitely an interesting conversation to have. Is he worthy of that type of status? I don't know. And he's also had an interesting case because he won it, and then he won it again without the 2 players, which was deserving. And so it's definitely a tight race. But give me Embiid, and now they both got MVPs, and now they both have to do something. And hopefully, we can get a situation, if not this year, maybe next year, where they can face off in the finals and we can't duck nothing. As somebody that got Embiid, though, it did piss me off that he did duck that smoke, though. Come on, anybody that's a basketball fan, that should have pissed you off.
I like that point, P, because we give, or at least I give Embiid shit. I'm a Celtic fan, so I don't really root for the Sixers ever in any circumstance. But whenever we do give Embiid shit for not making it past the second round, there's always an excuse. And the excuses are kind of dumb because at the time, Ben Simmons is an all-NBA defender. At the time, no one had problems with Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler leaves and ends up having a better career or having more success than after Philly. So even the excuses we do give Embiid, if you look back on it, they weren't excuses at the time. We're just looking after the fact and saying, well, he had X, Y, and Z go wrong. But at the time, it wasn't an issue. Ben Simmons was great. Jimmy Butler was great. Embiid would be third on my list. And before I get into this, I want to say I hope next year there's just a runaway MVP winner.
Same.
I hope next year we don't have to deal with this. I don't know if it's me just coming from a football fan who followed football way more close than NBA over this last decade. Because for football, it's always the Super Bowl. Who's going to win the championship? It's always about team. And basketball, this whole season has been about the MVP. We're not even talking about potential finals matchups, who we want to see in the finals. It's been, is it Embiid? Is it Jokic, Giannis a little bit? So I hope next year one of these guys just goes crazy and we don't have to deal with it. But I would have Embiid last on this list. And you really have to nitpick here because all three of these guys are great. I have a hard time giving Embiid the MVP when he's third in the East. And I understand Jokic was 6th seed last year and got it. But you look at the injuries the Nuggets had, it's a different situation. This year, for the most part, the Sixers have been healthy. I know Harden missed some time. But outside of that, you can't really look at a lot of things and say there's excuses for Joel Embiid to be the 3 seed. I thought there was a possibility they could be the 1 seed this year, even though the Celtics are great, the Bucks are great. That's just how great I thought this Sixers roster was constructed. And the fact that they're the 3rd seed, even though he's putting up 33 on stupid efficiency and being a great defender, it knocks down a tier for me. Second place, I would have Jokic. I think he's been great. Number 1 in the West all season long. John mentioned the efficiency, the historical numbers he's putting up, but I have Giannis as my MVP. And as someone who has gone against Giannis last season, going to have to go up against Giannis this season, I just think he's the most dominant player in the league. He struggles against the Celtics, so I see him damn near at his worst most of the time, and I know how great he can be. His efficiency's dropped this season, but he's taken on more offensive responsibility. He's taken career high in shots. He still has career high in points and rebounds this year. But to P's point, without Middleton in this situation, you would expect them to drop off a little bit, and they went on a 16-game winning streak in the middle of this season, the longest in the NBA this year, and no one batted an eye. We barely even talked about this 16-game winning streak. Giannis was tearing it up, and all season long he's been extremely efficient, extremely consistent, I should say. He doesn't have a single month where he's averaging less than 29, and Embiid started a little bit slow that first month, picked it up this last month or two. So I'd have Giannis, number 1 seed in the East. He's been doing it all season long. Jokic at 2 and Embiid 3rd.
I'm glad Dehls is giving props to Giannis, the player who's going to beat the Celtics in the playoffs.
I think
Dehls,
I will give you $1 every episode if you don't mention the Celtics in every single segment.
I'm never gonna.
It's
I'm not
like,
gonna get anybody.
you mentioned the Celtics in every.
You think I should have done a top 4 just to have Tatum in here?
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Well, Tatum, I think SGA is probably more deserving.
That's crazy.
Get out of here.
God.
That's crazy, P.
it
Bro,
ain't crazy.
They're 9
But it's
seed,
crazy.
10 seed. There's 10
Because
seed.
they so damn low.
They too low. They too low.
They have like
I-
39
I
wins.
get what you're trying to say, but yeah, they just if you switch teams, the Celtics are not the same.
They too low. They too low, Joel. If they was like 7th, I'd have pushed that with you. I would have pushed that with you.
You know, when it comes to Embiid, maybe I'm at fault for making my award this way, but I'm kind of doing it based off like a 3-year thing. You know, because 2 years ago, Joel Embiid was the 1st seed in the Eastern Conference. The Nuggets were the 3rd seed with Jamal Murray playing half the season, Michael Porter Jr. playing almost the entire season, and the award went to Jokic because Embiid played 51 games that year. Where it feels like this year, now Embiid's getting knocked for being a 3rd seed in an East that's tight. I mean, the Celtics, the Bucks, if I'm not mistaken, they'd be over the Nuggets if they were in the West. So for me, I think that, you know, I don't knock that when I talk about Embiid, and I think Embiid probably should have won the MVP 2 years ago, but his injury definitely took him out the race. And now, like, it's kind of like things have switched, right? 2 years ago, Embiid should have won, and now this year, Jokic should probably has like a slight edge, and now Embiid's probably going to win the award to make up for, you know, the award he didn't win, which I'm totally fine. I'm fine with because Embiid deserves the award.
I bet you are.
He has a great case. I mean, he's the first center since 1976, Bob McAdoo, to drop 30 points per game in back-to-back seasons. Now, Pee Wee, you made the point before. Joel Embiid's done nothing in the playoffs. The one series where the Sixers could have went to the conference finals, my man shot 37% from the field, averaged more turnovers than assists.
Talk about Toronto.
Yeah. And then I look at
That was a bad
what's
one.
the best win the Sixers have had in the Embiid era in the playoffs, and it's last year's Toronto team where they almost went to 7 games, and the
And he hit
Raptors
the
were missing
game.
half their
3-0,
starting
yeah.
lineup. The other teams they beat were
Yeah,
the Goran
3-0.
Dragic led 44-win Miami Heat, or the as Josh Richardson, the Brooklyn Nets and Jared Dudley, and the other one I don't even remember.
But
So-
to your point, P, though, about like Joel Embiid not getting as criticized, I think it has to do with a couple things, because somebody in the comments just mentioned a good point. When Giannis won MVP in the bubble and then lost in the second round to Miami, everybody criticized Giannis. And I think the reason for that was because he was the face of the collapse. He's the one that didn't play well. He averaged 22 on bad efficiency. The Heat have always kind of guarded Giannis well. Versus Embiid, when he lost to Atlanta, they lost in 7 games, and he had bad fourth quarters, but for the most part, the glaring issue was Ben Simmons, and that's why he got most of the attention and blame. Where I think, like, if Embiid laid a stinker and Simmons was efficient, people are talking about Embiid, but I think people view that series saying, no, Embiid did at least 80% of his job. It was Ben Simmons who just really didn't show up in the series.
I think, like, Pee Wee did make a good point, though, and it stretches on to all 3 guys. Giannis to a lesser degree because he already has his ring, but for the Joker and Embiid specifically, I mean, we gave Joker a pass because he didn't have his guys in the playoffs. So the last 2 years, we gave him a pass. You didn't have Jamal. You didn't have Michael Porter Jr. But now you're kind of suited and booted. You got your guys. Embiid, you got your guys. It's kind of like now you guys are at the top of you're at the top of the league. You're in these MVP discussions. We want to see you push further in the playoffs. If you're the MVP caliber player, we want to see you get to the big one, get to the conference finals, specifically for Joel Embiid. We want to see you get there, make memorable moments. You know, like we've seen Steph do it, LeBron do it, KD do it. We've seen the big time players, but we want to see the 3 guys that's consistently in the MVP race make that push.